Hello world, my name is Michael and welcome to another Teapot Tech Talk. Today we're going to be taking a look at Tailwind. So my history with Tailwind is virtually non-existent because even though I'm a front-end developer, I haven't actually used it before. I mean, I've heard about it, I'm not a complete troglodyte, but I never had a need for it before now. In fact, my initial hot take was, why would anybody use this? Isn't this CSS with extra steps? So why would I want to look at it now? Well, that all started when I needed a new way of updating my site, and I was a bit tired of using Bootstrap, so I wanted to see what the landscape looked like. Apparently, Tailwind has been getting a lot of attention lately, and I thought that this was as good a time as any to take a look at it. So, what is Tailwind? Well, according to their site, Tailwind is a utility-first CSS framework packed with classes that can be composed to build any design directly in your markup. So my initial hot take was semi-right. It's CSS on steroids. Unlike other frameworks, it's not as opinionated, nor does it force you to do things the right way. It comes with a lot of components, but there's a big catch, and we'll get to that later. But at its core, it's more like a library instead of a framework. The plan for today is to try to improve one of the pages on my site, which is the post page, using Tailwind. The idea is to see how long it would take me to take a relatively ugly page and make it less ugly. Since my last time challenge did not go so well, I will not be setting an arbitrary time today, but I will be keeping track to see relatively how long it would take me. Afterwards, I'll give my thoughts on Tailwind and give a verdict. I think I need to get this started now because otherwise this intro will get a little too long. If you think it's already too long, tell me about it in the comments.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Alright, let's get on with it. We'll put up the timer, but before we get to quacking, we need to line up a few ducks. Duck number one. The app we're going to be working with is pretty simple. The CMS is a headless WordPress site. Try saying that 4 times in a row. I use GraphQL for the API and the front end is built using Next.js. If you're interested in that, comment below, I'll make a follow-up video. Duck number 2. Installing Tailwind is pretty simple. If you're starting from scratch with Next.js, there's a choice that installs it for you. If you're using an existing project, then there's a guide. Links in the description. Ducks out of the way, let's start the clock. We have 4 components which we want to take a look at. The first one at the top is the title component, then there's the content component, then there's the recommended posts component, and at the very bottom we've got a footer component. We're going to start working in mobile, focusing on the title. So if you look at the title, everything's a bit squashed up. I think we want to add some space at the top and some space at the bottom. So we go to the page header component, and what we're going to do is add the padding and center the text. Let's take a look at how that looks like on our site. This is fine, but I think we can get away with a little more space on desktop. Our next stop will be the layout. So first, I think we need a little bit of a padding, and I'm going to take this opportunity to center the entire layout. So to do this, we go to our page component, we add our padding and our centering class. Next on layout, I think we need a little space between the content and the recommended pages on mobiles. And finally, if you look at it on desktop, you'll notice that these things are still flowing one on top of the other. This is not what we want on large displays. We want them to be side by side. We want the content to be here and the recommended pages to be there. So let's do that right now. So at this point, I want to point out a few things. I put the gap so that the 2 columns will not be squashed up together. And the next class, max W7XL, just puts a limit on the container itself because we want it to be centered in the middle and not spreading out through the whole page on very large screens. So let's take a look at our handiwork. Our next task is to deal with the content component. If you look at it on mobile, everything looks fine. There is a little problem that I don't like the sharp corners on the image, but there's another problem. If you expand the width a little bit, you'll notice that the image is going to the left. We don't want that. We want it to be centered. So first of all, let's round out the corners and center the image. To do this, we're going to go to the post component. We're going to add rounded, center it, and then just for fun, we're going to add a little bit of a space. The next thing we're going to do is talk about our fonts. Now, the default fonts are okay, but they're not really that readable and they're not that pretty. Tailwind does allow you to work with fonts, but we're not going to be using it. We're just going to put it in the global CSS because we want a consistent experience across all components. So I'm going to cheat a little bit by fast forwarding all of my typing because we don't want to spend all day here. And done. Let's take a look at what it looks like. Okay, that's much better. Now let's turn our attention to the footer. The goal here is to have everything centered, put in a nice light blue background, and increase the size of the link icons. Next, let's take a look at the recommended posts. What we want to do is to have a recommended post container with the light blue background, and we're going to center everything. We're going to add some padding as well so that the cards are not pressed up against the container border. And just for fun, we're going to round out the corners because I like rounded corners and I'm easy to please. And finally, let's take a look at the card. We're going to add a white background. We're going to round off the corners. Again, I'm easy. And then we're going to add a little bit of a padding and a margin at the bottom so that each card can be separated from the one above it. And there you have it, easy peasy lemon squeezy. It looks much better than what we had when we started, but you might be asking yourself, if you have more of these classes, will it not pollute your JSX? Well, yes, it will. You end up with really ugly JSX, but there is a way around this because you can use CSS modules with Tailwind. Let's take a look at how you do that. First of all, you create a CSS module class, and then you apply the Tailwind classes you want to use. You import your styles, and then use the imported styles. And there you have it, absolutely no change. So yes, you can make it slightly cleaner. And there you have it. It's not the Mona Lisa of websites, but it's now more readable and it was pretty fast to do. So my initial thoughts. I like how intuitive it feels. I can see someone who is used to using it regularly breeze through styling just like that. Another issue I want to talk about is components. Frameworks like Bootstrap come with some components, for example, accordions, panels, modals, etc. Tailwind has components, but most of the good ones need you to pay for them. The gating of components behind a paywall is a bit of a bummer, but I guess I can live with that because most of the time I won't be the one paying for them. Hello world, Future Michael here. After I finished recording, I found out that there are sites dedicated to providing free components for Tailwind. So, paid Tailwind components might not be as big a deal breaker as I initially thought. Back to the video. Another thing I like is how easy it is to build your vision. Like a Bootstrap site will always look like a Bootstrap site and needs a little work to make it not look bootstrappy. It's a fascinating framework. I can see the use case. It's not opinionated, and that's a positive. So if you want to build something fast and you have a clear vision of what that should look like, go to Tailwind. But if you're doing a prototype and you're design challenged and don't mind saying design opinions, I'd go Bootstrap, Material, or Chakra. I will probably use it for my site redesign later, but that's more because I already have a specific vision in mind and I'd rather work with Tailwind than fight with Bootstrap. And that's all I have for you today. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to get this channel up and running, and your interaction would really help us out. Until next time, happy coding.